My name's Rebecca from the Chamber. If anyone hasn't met me before, I'm part of the events team, and I'm delighted to be joined by Stuart Cameron from Health in Mind, who's helping us with today's event. I'd like to take a moment to also thank Parabola, who have sponsored this series. This event is the first in a series of three of mental health that the Chamber felt was very important to run, and we're very grateful to Parabola for supporting this event. And thank you to Stuart for all the work that you've put in pulling it all together. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass over to Stuart, who's going to take us through today's session, where we're going to be looking at rethinking personal wellbeing. So over to you, Stuart.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. I'll just share my screen just now. Can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Yep. So yeah, as Rebecca said, we're doing this as a series of three. My colleague Hayley is going to be doing one, I believe, on the 22nd, I think, and that's going to be about supporting other people with their mental health. And then I'll be back again, I think, on the 5th of August with one about habits and sort of habit formation, how to form new habits or break old habits. And if anyone wants to find out more information about them, you can always ask at the end. And again, I'd like to just say it's really nice to see so many people here. Thanks to everyone for coming, and thanks to Rebecca and the Chamber of Commerce for sort of facilitating this. So my name's Stuart Cameron. I'm a development worker at Health in Mind, and part of my role is putting on a variety of wellbeing courses, and they just look at various sort of subjects related to mental and emotional wellbeing. And they're free of charge, so if anyone would like any information on them. Rebecca, am I right in saying that everyone will have my contact details already? Is that correct?
Yep, so Stuart's contact details are on the delegate list. If anyone didn't get a copy, then just let me know and I'll pass that on for you.
Yep, smashing, thank you. So what we'll do today, as I said, the title of this webinar is Rethinking Personal Wellbeing. And to help us do that, we're going to look at a sort of framework for wellness, a different model of wellness. So I'll dive into that a bit, and then we'll have a brief discussion about the impact of COVID-19 and all these things at the moment. Then we'll look at how to sort of utilise that information, and then we'll move to a sort of Q&A section. As Rebecca said, if you've got any questions, I'm happy if you want to interject, but if it might be best to wait until the end. I'll try and stop throughout anyway to check and see if anyone's got any. So first things first, I suppose, is about defining wellness. Now, I've taken this definition from the Global Wellness Institute, and they've defined wellness as the active pursuit of activities, choices, and lifestyles that lead to a state of holistic health. Now, you can see there that I have underlined two sort of key words. The first one being active, and that's really to highlight that this is a pursuit. It's something that we have to actively sort of undertake, I suppose. It's not, wellness isn't something that just sort of chances upon us. Now, that's a kind of thing, we're familiar with this concept in terms of physical health. We understand that it's not solely the responsibility of doctors and medical professionals to keep us well. We know that we should be doing things like, eating a balanced diet. We know that we should be doing exercise, etc. And these are our own personal responsibilities. So it's much the same with other parts of our overall well-being in general. The second word that I've underlined there is holistic. Now, I know that this is a very kind of overused word. It's very cliched, but it's true nonetheless that all of these parts are connected. We're whole beings, and we need to look at the bigger picture. And I'd actually, before I move on, I'd just like to say a wee word about the wellness as different to illness. When we're unwell, things are very much about feeling better. It's about correction. It's about sort of treatment, and it's very much focused on a clinical responsibility in many ways. Whereas when we look at wellness, it's very much about thriving. It's about prevention and maintaining positive health. it's about personal responsibility rather than clinical and medical responsibility. So bear that in mind as we go through this. Now, this is a picture of the model here. You'll see that it's got 6 different sort of domains in it. Now, the 2 at the top here we're generally quite familiar with, so the idea of physical health and mental health. But this also contains spiritual health, emotional health, social health, and environmental health. And what I'll do today is I'll dive a little bit into what we mean by each one of those. It's worth mentioning that whilst this particular model has 6 different domains, there are other models out there which have more and have less. I personally prefer this one just because it's quite concise, but I will talk as we go through about some of the other domains that come in different models. Now, I'm kind of hoping that this information will sort of come in at 2 levels. So on one hand, I'm hoping that it provides us with a new way to look at our own well-being, and therefore maybe help us find some new solutions in terms of managing it. I also hope this kind of second level that I hope it comes in at is, I know a lot of people are struggling at the moment with the current situation in terms of lockdown, and it's really kind of turned a lot of people's worlds upside down. And so perhaps it'll provide people with maybe some answers or a better understanding of why that's the case. So the first sort of domain that we're going to look at here is this one about physical wellness. Now, bear with me. This, we're all kind of familiar with the concept of a healthy body, healthy mind, and that's certainly true. So this domain includes things around diet, exercise, physical activity, sleep, physical appearance, medication, etc. And I'd like to just sort of dive in and pick a few of these apart. The first one that I've got there is diet, and that has a massive, massive impact on our well-being. I mean diet, not dieting, to be precise. I think by and large, most of us know what things go towards making a kind of healthy, balanced diet and what things don't. So I'm not going to talk much about that. But I would encourage people to do a bit of research on it. There's a great organisation called Edinburgh Community Food, and they do a lot of training sessions and information sessions around kind of food and mood and how food impacts on our mental well-being. So you get a lot of great information around, I guess, for instance, some of the more obvious ones are about if we're having foods that are really high in sugars, etc., things like sweets and pastries or even fruit juices, we get this kind of big spike in our energy and in our mood, but then it's quite often preceded by quite a slump, quite a drop. And for me personally, this is the kind of time in the afternoon. We're approaching the time in the afternoon where I get the afternoon slump. So you might notice that, and it may be that whatever you're eating during lunch is causing that. One last thing on food as well. One of the things that I found most interesting recently was they've done quite a bit of studies around the serotonin in our bodies, and serotonin, for anyone who's not familiar, is part of those kind of feel-good chemicals that we get. Is actually, they say estimate about 90% of it is produced by the bacteria that's found in our gut. So it's not our brain, it's our digestive system that produces it. And for anyone who's seen sort of these kind of yogurt adverts, they usually are, where they talk about healthy bacteria and probiotics, etc. That's a lot of that's actually true in the sense of there are things that we can do in order to look after that bacteria and to make it healthy. So it's certainly worth checking out. The next thing that I've got there on that list is exercise and physical activity. Now, I mean, I think at this point we all know that we should be engaging in physical activity, and It's well known, well researched that exercise actually really increases activity in our parasympathetic nervous system, which is largely responsible for sort of rest and digest. So it helps us relax, it helps us recover, etc. Sleep I've got there is a massive one, and I think a lot of people have really been affected by sleep. It's for many of us, when we're anxious, sleep is the first thing that we really know starts to change, I suppose. And we all know what it feels like when we get a poor night's sleep, effectively. So it affects so much of our functioning, from our concentration to our energy levels. We're less able to regulate our emotions. We become much more irritable. Our body doesn't repair as well. So it's really important to have what they refer to as good sleep hygiene. And for anyone who's not familiar with that term, sleep hygiene doesn't mean brushing your teeth before you go to bed. It just means all the things around your bedtime routine, about not having caffeine late in the evening, about avoiding too much screen time, etc. The last one that I'll pick apart here a little bit is this one that I've got here on physical appearance. And I don't want to go too much into it, because I think it's quite easy to conflate sort of physical appearance and some of the sort of more negative aspects of it in our society, that we're kind of bombarded with images and unrealistic body expectations. But I'd be very surprised if everyone hasn't either had this experience themselves at the moment, or with someone that they know. But someone's just desperate to get their hair cut. You feel like you're scruffy, and it's not the best feeling. So things around that, about taking care of our personal experience. We know what it feels like to get a nice haircut, and we know what it feels like to buy a new outfit that we like, etc. And these things are not they're not frivolous. It's nice that we feel comfortable in our skin and comfortable with who we are. And the other ones there I've mentioned are medication, so alcohol, tobacco, and caffeine consumption. Again, these things have a huge impact on our well-being. So I'll jump forward onto the next one. So this is mental wellness that we're discussing here now. I just want to clarify that this is different from the overall concept of mental well-being. Some people prefer to think of this actually as kind of intellectual wellness. So it includes things around our hobbies, our leisure interests, learning, creativity, and being able to express ourselves well. Involves things around books and music and art and any kind of cultural engagement that we've got. It's about problem solving, goal setting, and I'll discuss this as well, but the idea of occupational wellness. So what we do for work and with our daily lives being important. Now, again, I'd be surprised if somebody hasn't had their kind of hobbies and leisure interests changed recently, or how they access them has changed as a result of COVID-19, and we sort of see the effects of that. Learning is a particularly important one. We know from loads and loads of studies that learning is hugely beneficial for our well-being. There's a model that the NHS promotes quite heavily, and it's called the 5 Ways to Wellbeing. And basically, it's a list of sort of 5 different domains, if you will, that we can act within in order to improve our mental health. And one of those things is learning. And the reason for that is because we know it boosts a real sort of positive sense of self, increases our self-efficacy. It helps us to connect with others, maybe people that we wouldn't normally otherwise be in contact with. It can give us a real sense of purpose, a sense of achievement. And there's something really lovely about learning as an adult, and so many of us have come through an education system that's about attaining grades and passing tests and completing modules, etc. And there's something really nice about doing that process without all the pressure, about learning just out of curiosity. So that's a big one. The next one that I've mentioned there is self-expression and creativity. Now, I don't necessarily mean creativity with a kind of capital C. It doesn't need to be oil painting and writing poetry, etc. But it can be anything from reorganizing a room or doing our gardening and our DIY. It can be making a meal with a friend, or writing a letter or an email that sort of expresses our opinions. These are all parts of being creative, and it's incredibly important in that we engage with the world around us, and that we feel a sense of being in control of it, in a sense, or at least contributing to it. And it's such an important thing, because so often, and again, I dare say that many people have felt this before in the past, but where your sort of daily life becomes getting up, going to work. Maybe you've got the energy to sort of drag yourself to the gym and work your way through your workout program, or you need to go and pick kids up at school, and then you go home and you make dinner, and then you've just sort of got no energy left, and you plop yourself down in front of the TV, and you stay there until it's bedtime, and then it's a repeat from there. So it's incredibly important that we find the time to engage with these things that sort of provide us with a sense of identity. And I've mentioned there as well that this balance between creating versus consuming. I think especially in modern life, we're very much encouraged to consume, whether that's food, or whether it's consuming on social media, or whether it's just consuming telly and binging on Netflix. And not that there's anything wrong with those things, but sometimes it feels like the balance gets a bit out of control, that we just become passive recipients almost in our own lives. And part of what makes us human is this incredible ability to be creative. Now, I'm just going to jump down here to this sense of occupational well-being. This idea of do we have work that is in some way mentally fulfilling for us? Do we have the chance within our workplace to continue to learn? Are we able to be creative and make decisions and act on that creativity? And we all probably, I guess, know what the opposite feels like, of being in a job that you feel you're just kind of going through the motions, and it doesn't feel particularly fulfilling to you. The next one that I've mentioned there is about spiritual wellness. Now, I want to highlight that this is not necessarily organised religion. I think particularly in Western countries, we've moved away so much from organised religion that I think we're not really sure always what it means, this term of spirituality or spiritual wellness. And so when I talk about it, really what I'm just meaning is it's about having a place where we can think about and discuss perhaps our values, how we might live a sort of examined life in that sense, what responsibilities we've got to ourselves and to the people in our lives, to our communities, etc. Do we have somewhere to kind of celebrate some of the more momentous occasions with life, around marriage and things like this? Do we have space to reflect honestly on our experience? So this kind of sense of maybe perhaps some of the kind of bigger things in life. Jumping down, I've got on point 5 there, I've got this idea of expressing gratitude. And it's cropping up more and more in a lot of the psychological research that they do, which is this feeling of gratitude being hugely beneficial for us. How do we feel and how do we express gratitude? And it's something that's incredibly beneficial in terms of getting perspective on what's happening with our lives and our own worries. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in sort of maybe toxic self-criticism or comparing ourselves with other people, often unfavourably. We get wrapped up in sort of the myriad things that we need to do or that we don't have or that we're struggling with. And being able to feel and express gratitude as a great way of sort of cutting through all that. So I've got here as well this 7th point down about meditation, prayer, and yoga, mindfulness, etc. Again, these sort of I guess traditionally Eastern sort of spiritual practices, we've seen a real rise in them across the West. And I think there was a time, I think really yoga was the first one to sort of to keep in. And I think people at the time thought that it was just going to be a bit of a fad, that this was just a new exercise class, but it seems as if it's really here to stay. And I think one of the reasons for that is because there's an element to it that's much more than just a physical exercise practice. And there's a growing body of research that sort of evidences how beneficial these things are for our mind. As I'm saying this, I recall that there's a series on Netflix. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it's called The Mind Explained. And in that series, I think they're just sort of relatively short, very informative little sort of documentaries almost. But there's one about mindfulness, and in it they go on to talk about how meditation effectively, they've done brain scans and it physically reduces the size of the amygdala in our brain. And for anyone who's not familiar with what the amygdala are, they're the part of the brain that deals a lot with emotional processes, particularly things around fear and anxiety. So they're crucial in our fight or flight response. And meditation has actually been known to reduce the activity in that part of the brain. And just one last thing on that, it really, it wasn't that long ago in society that jogging and running and doing physical exercise just because it was good for you was considered an odd thing to do. And I think actually the same thing will happen with regards to meditation. I think that we'll see a massive rise in that. And I think it'll get to a point where it's almost the norm sort of to do it, or at least we're being encouraged to do it. For anyone who's interested in sort of trying meditation, I know there's people use apps quite a lot for it, so I think Headspace is the most common one, but my sort of personal recommendation on that would be an app called Waking Up. I think there is a subscription fee, but I know that the people who run it are keen for there to be that finance is never a barrier, so you can get a free subscription if it's going to be any inconvenience at all. But in that app, there's a whole series, a course effectively of guided meditations, and it's very secular and very scientific. So I would recommend checking that out if you're at all interested. Now, can I just, I think I've done 3 of these. I'll just check and see if anyone's got any questions or any comments that they want to make just now, if that's okay. Just check the chat. No? Okay, so this next one that I've got here is about emotional wellness. So this is really the kind of internal aspect of our well-being. Are we able to kind of recognize and understand our own emotions? Do we know that our emotions don't just kind of come out of nowhere, that there's an explicit link between how we interact in the world, what we think, and consequently how we feel. And there's a really strong relationship there, and it's sometimes we sort of go through life without ever really thinking too much about this connection. But it's certainly it's worth thinking about. And the next one I've put there is can we respond and behave effectively to emotions? So, for instance, when we get anxious at work, for instance, how do we respond to that? Do we start to get frantic? Do we start to try and do a million things at once because we're feeling overwhelmed? Do we snipe at people, or are we able to sort of collect our emotions and sort of move on with things effectively. So it's certainly worth giving some thought to that. I put here can we effectively be more able to respond to our emotions rather than reacting to them, if that makes sense. I've also put here the idea of relaxation, taking time out, taking space for holidays. These things are incredibly important for our emotional wellness. And I know that I had mentioned it in the previous slide, but again, meditation, mindfulness, these things are absolutely crucial in terms of understanding that link between our own emotions. If anyone's ever learned anything as well about CBT, or cognitive behavioural therapy, or if anybody's ever gone to CBT, it's a great practice in being able to understand that whole link between thoughts, feelings, behaviour, etc. I've also put there about being empathic towards others. So part of emotional well-being is not just about dealing with their own emotions and being able to respond to them, but are we able to recognise emotions in other people? Are we able to communicate that to them effectively? Can we respond well to it, etc.? Now, in emotional well-being as well, I've also put there's the possibility of I guess romantic wellness in that sense, or sexual well-being as well. So that's something for people to think about. I'm just going to check the time. We're at past. So this one here is social wellness. Now, as I mentioned before, I run a series of groups and courses. And one of the most common pieces of feedback that we get from people is folks saying things like, I'm just really glad that I'm not the only person going through this, and I'm glad that other people experience similar things. And I think in modern life, we quite often go through modern life maybe struggling a wee bit or feeling kind of unstable, and yet it seems on the surface as if everyone else is seeming to manage. And by and large, it's really just not the case. It's just what we see on the surface. So I've put this little. I mean, it's a little bit cheesy, but I think it's very true in the sense. They talk about the difference between illness and wellness is the I in illness and the we in wellness. And I mean, as I say, it's cheesy, but there's a real. I think that sums quite a lot up. We know when we're not in a great place emotionally, that we sort of feel isolated. We feel more alone with our thoughts and our emotions. We feel more self-conscious, more self-involved. We're very much preoccupied with our own ego. And then the opposite is true with wellness. So, when we're feeling well, we get this real sense of connection with other places, with other people. We feel less kind of self-concerned. We feel more capable of engaging with the world around us. We feel more empathetic. We're more understanding with other people. We're more patient. So connection is a hugely, hugely important thing. And it's important that we have a broad range of people in our lives to help meet our needs. I actually, just the other day, I sat on my laptop. I've not really been anywhere, but I went to a webinar about men and mental health and how that was likely to be affected by COVID-19. And one of the interesting things they were talking about was how when men experience a breakup, quite often the only person that they're kind of intimately emotionally connected with is their partner. That is to say that many of their other connections are meeting someone to play sports, or it's meeting people down the pub, and there aren't these kind of sort of deeper connections. Now, it's not to say that those your drinking buddies or your sports mates are not important connections. They definitely are. But it's about knowing that we've got a range of emotional needs. and having them there. I've put there, are we able to form meaningful connections with those around us? Are we able to interact in ways that are appropriate to the space and to the people? Shared interests. So another one is about hobbies, and again, it's really it's great for being able to connect us with people that we might not come in contact with, otherwise come in contact with in daily life. Now, the last one that I've got here is what we term environmental wellness. Now, again, it's not necessarily environment with a kind of capital C, but rather as our immediate living space. Do we feel safe in our immediate living space? Are we comfortable? Do we feel as if we have a sense of control over it? Is there beauty there? And that applies to every other kind of aspect of our life as well. When it comes to work, do we have a place of work that feels safe for us, that we feel that we have a say in? I'm sure everybody's been in a job where maybe you haven't felt safe, or you felt perhaps bullied or harassed, and it can really negatively affect our mental health. So is that a space that we feel that we can reach our potential in? The immediate local environment, do we feel engaged with that? Do we have access to nature? I mean, the subject of nature is particularly interesting with regards to mental health, because there's been a growing body of research around how beneficial it is for it. It's not really something that we understand particularly well, but there's evidence to suggest that spending more time in kind of rural areas and green spaces is incredibly beneficial for our mental health. And then, of course, this goes on as well to the wider environment. Do we feel that we are contributing positively, or are we denigrating the space in which we live? And it's worth giving some thought to that. And I've included in there this sense of financial wellness. Finances are certainly, particularly if we feel it when it's an issue for us, it can really weigh quite heavily on our mental well-being. So I'm just going to move on to this now. I'm just going to skip this. We won't do this at the moment, but I would encourage people to do this in their own time. It's just to take a sheet of paper or a Word document and to put those 6 headings and to think of the things that we already do in those domains, the ways that we sort of look after ourselves. And I think as you do it as well, you'll see how connected all these things are. So there will be things that you'll do where you'll think, okay, well, maybe I'll put, using yoga as the example that I mentioned earlier on, well, of course, yeah, that's a physical practice, but it also maybe comes under that sense of being spiritual and something that you are learning about. So it comes under the aspect of mental wellness as well. So it's all very much connected and linked, and I would really encourage people to sort of just look through that lens at your own life and see what's going on there. Now, this section here, the impact of COVID-19 is a huge one, and I think already you'll get a sense for how it's kind of turned people's lives upside down a wee bit. In terms of physical health, most of the people that I know have commented in some way. I don't want to focus simply on the negatives, but many of us, for instance, have got a heightened state of uncertainty and anxiety around us, and it's affecting our sleep, whereas other people are just glad that they don't have an hour's commute to work every morning and they're able to work at home. Where some people are now less able to access sporting facilities and gyms, etc., that they've previously made use of. Other people are finding it really beneficial to be out going for walks and having that additional time. In terms of mental health, as I mentioned just there, the people engaging in hobbies and sort of more leisure activities is something that will definitely have changed a lot for people. Also, our kind of cultural spaces. So I know museums and theatres and cinemas, etc., have all closed down at the moment. So people are not engaging as much as that. But on the other hand, I know a lot of people have been saying that they've had more time to read, or they've had more time to cook, kind of healthy meals or things that they've been wanting to try. People have been learning more and doing it as a kind of individual pursuit rather than as a group endeavour. The third one there, spiritual. So I mean, most places of kind of congregation have closed down temporarily. There's meditation groups have closed down, yoga classes have closed down. But then on the other side of things, people are sort of reassessing what they kind of want from life in a sense, and what they want from work, and what kind of connections they want with their family, etc. Perhaps people want more time. In terms of emotional, anyone who's ever maybe been on a retreat or anything like that will know that spending sort of a lot of time with your own thoughts can be good or bad, and what really defines what really defines that experience ultimately is the quality of our thoughts or the quality of our attention. So if we're kind of plagued with kind of toxic self-criticism, and we're always picking ourselves apart, etc., then it's quite emotionally harmful to have all that time to engage in that. But on the other hand, if we're able to be alone with our thoughts and to be quite gentle with ourselves and quite compassionate with ourselves, then that whole experience is very different. The social aspect has been a massive one that's changed. I mean, the most common way of socialising, i.e. via pubs and restaurants, have all been closed down and are just starting to open back up. But it's people have really, struggled to go into lockdown with a lot of these things, and now in many senses are feeling a sense of anxiety to go back to it. And a lot of people have felt the benefit of not having to sort of engage with people socially. There's a kind of real pressure sometimes, I think, people feel to engage socially, and some people are happy to not have to deal with that. And the last one here, this environmental one. So again, it's been great to see so many people engaging with kind of DIY at home, or redecorating, or real rise in people taking care of their gardens, etc. We've also seen that the kind of interesting effects that COVID-19 has had on the environment. But again, for people who perhaps are not living in an environment that feels as safe and as comfortable for them, it's been an incredibly difficult time. So just jump onto this second last slide. So how to use this information now? We may find, if we kind of look at our life through that sort of prism, we may find that over time we've placed emphasis on one particular aspect and lost sight of others. So it's quite common, I see, in the course that I put on, when people come in, particularly if they've started a new business or if they're just out of university or education, that a lot of their emphasis has been put on this kind of mental aspect and their work and their occupation, effectively, or their learning, and so much of the other things have fallen away. So it can just help provide a bit of insight into what maybe aspects of your life that you could potentially give attention to. And then it helps us already assess the things that we're already doing quite well. So everyone will be doing things at the moment that helps them stay well. And it's great to be able to appreciate that and to sort of place more importance on those things. So many of these things, taking time to go for a walk, or spending time to read your book, or taking 10 minutes to do some mindfulness, when we're busy or we're stressed, they're often the first things to go, but actually they're some of the most important parts of our day, and they're what effectively makes up our day. So it can help us appreciate what we're already doing well, and it can help us to identify areas that we feel that we could be doing a bit better in. Now, I'm just going to move on. Again, we won't do this just now, but I would also encourage people, when you do make your list, to take some time to think about things that perhaps you're not doing at the moment, but you would be able to do in the near future in order to kind of improve that area of your life. So that's more or less it for me. I don't know if we're wanting to move on to questions now.
I'll mute myself. Thank you, Stuart. Does anyone have any questions? Or even comments, or any sort of comments they want to make on things that they've done that they've found particularly helpful? This is a really nice space of a group of people to be able to share advice and ask for opinions and stuff on things as well.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to know what things people have been doing actually to keep themselves in a kind of good space over this time, and a good mental space.
Mm-hmm. Fiona McFarlane, you've got a question. I'll just unmute you just now. Oh, Fiona, it doesn't seem to let me unmute you. Are you able to? There we go.
Hi.
Hi, we can hear you perfect.
Right, I don't know why I'm not on video. Oh, yeah, there we go.
Oh, hi, Fiona.
It's really back to the last slide there, because it's really interesting, because as you were talking, absolutely everything I did for my mental well-being is stuff that's in the never never, as far as the phases of bringing out of lockdown. You know, if you're in a choir, if you do theatre, if you go to theatres, you know, if you like the spa, if you like a massage, if you like a facial, you know, all of that, which is kind of all the relaxation stuff over and above a bit of fitness and eating a healthy diet, all the cultural stuff and physical well-being stuff is kind of in a distance. And I wonder what people are going to do to keep on the positive side, you know, because you can bake, but then, you know, that's great. I love baking, but ultimately that has other disadvantages, doesn't it?
Yeah, excellent point there, Fiona. I've experienced much of the same thing actually, and I was really pleased to see at the start of lockdown, and they've continued it, but a lot of the theatres and things like that, and ballet companies and opera houses have been been putting on sort of free live streaming, and I think that's a great way. But you're right, it's one, I feel personally like it's just not quite the same as being able to actually go out and engage in these things. And the kind of interesting thing is the way that these have been deemed non-essential. Now, I'm not saying that they should be the first things to open back up, but for many of us, they are essential for our well-being, and you make a great point. I would also be interested to know what other things people have been doing to sort of stay connected with more cultural activities in this time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona.
Does anyone else have any other questions or comments or any discussions that we want to have in this group? Yeah, Portia?
Yeah, I mean, for me, being empathic, I think, is so important so that we can all support each other in our communities and things like that. I've certainly noticed I actually speak to more of my neighbours than I ever have, and it's really nice. It's actually refreshing, and I don't want to go back now to how it had been in that respect. But I also find that sometimes you can take on too much of other people's feelings, and for me personally, I find that's quite a hard thing to understand that that's not my emotion, it's somebody else's, and just to try and make sure that it's separate. But you know, I think it is a fine line to try and reach with it.
Yeah, no, you make an excellent point there, Portia, and I think as well it's that sense of trying to balance compassion, that is to say compassion for other people and for other people's struggles and their difficulties, and self-compassion in that sense, and knowing your own, having your own boundaries in terms of that, and being able to recognize when you're able to deal with these things, and recognize when actually that's just going to become a burden for yourself emotionally. I don't mean that we just sort of fob people off, or we say, look, sorry, I don't have time for your worries at the moment, but knowing when you're best able to deal with it. And I think that's actually the importance of what I was just saying with Fiona, is all these kind of personal, kind of cultural activities that we get a lot of energy from, and a lot of inspiration from, in a sense, that help kind of buoy us up and make us feel more able to connect with others. But you're right, it's definitely an absolute challenge to stay connected and to be in touch with people, but to also deal with the kind of more negative sides of that. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that.
Thanks.
Oh, Elaine has said this is the most useful Zoom call this side of lockdown. That's a nice.
How many weeks are we in now?
I know, and just think of how many Zoom calls people have been doing. That's a really nice thing to hear. Thanks very much for that, Elaine.
No, you're welcome. It's actually, Stuart, becoming a huge topic with the over 300 organisations that we Inspiring Scotland work with, and it's becoming. You can see it. You can see the people are beginning to melt down, and that was, to me, that was one-stop shopping. So I'm definitely going to share this slide deck with them, because I think very many parts will resonate with a lot of them, and it might just encourage them to take, heaven forbid, a day off or some time to themselves.
Yeah.
Before that, the we in wellness goes into I in illness.
Yeah, it's a bit cheesy, but I like it. I think it really captures that sense of connection we feel when we're well, and that sense of isolation we feel when we're not great.
Yeah.
No, thanks so much for that feedback.
I know I'll be in touch with you.
Oh, please do get in touch. And that reminds me, have I got? So I'll be doing my colleague Hayley's doing the next one, the second one, and that's about I guess supporting other people on a more kind of personal level with their mental well-being, which I guess relates directly to what we were just talking about and the point you raised, Portia. And then the third one that I'll be doing is about habits and habit formation. And one of the reasons that I decided to do that was because so many, I mean, just about most of our daily habits that turned on their heads when lockdown started, and we'll all be in the process of developing new habits and changing habits. Or so many people when lockdown started had grand plans for starting a daily yoga practice, and they were going to be learning Spanish, and we all had these great plans for how we were going to make our lives better, and so all of that has to do with habits and how we integrate them into our lives, or if people are trying to sort of break habits. So we'll look a little bit at that and how all that works. So I would encourage people to come along if you're available to them.
There's also, all these sessions are being filmed and put on the Chamber's YouTube channel, so do make sure to check it out. And if you do want to pass the links on to anybody as well, you can also do that, which is a helpful part to get them involved in some of the discussion elements of the presentation as well. So that leads me on nicely, Stuart. Nice wee plug there. That does my job. As I said, this is the first of 3 sessions, so if you do want to book onto the other ones, please do. They're all on our website now, and Stuart's details are on the delegate list, so if you do have any further questions that you maybe want to ask out of a social context, then please do. We are here at the Chamber, are here to support you, so if you ever do just want to have a chat or talk to anybody, we are always here to support you, so don't forget about us. We're not just here as a business organisation, we are also people, so do just get in touch with us as well. Thank you so much for all coming along this afternoon. I hope it has all been useful, and hopefully see you all again soon. Take care and stay safe, and see you soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, folks.
Thanks, bye.